Yes. This is like elementary school. The principal Håvard is gathering the rest outside. Don't be outside, come inside and play. Yeah. Welcome back to this last session of VR in knowledge transfer. Knowledge is important, but we all know that we don't have all of the knowledge. We need to cooperate. And an example of that, we're going to hear a speech about it, but a little digression is here in Hamar we have something called a stupetårn. Yes, we do. It's a quite famous stupetårn. I would say that this is my percentage, but I would say that 80% of Norwegian population knows about the stupetårn in Hamar. And the reason? Well, it's quite nice. It's not big, but it's nice. It works. You can jump from it into the lake, and you will get wet. But the reason why it's so popular, it's perhaps that it costs a bit more than expected. Just a little bit. Why on earth did it cost so much? I think some of the answers is knowledge transfer and cooperation. The next speakers are going to talk about that. Yes, wouldn't it be easier if we had built it before we built it? Next speaker is going to talk about that and show us what it means. Please welcome two companies that do extreme different things, but use knowledge transfer to help each other. Please welcome from Covi, Birgit Farstad Larsen, and from the Innlandet-based company Vixel, CEO Rune Malli.
Yes, thank you very much for the presentation, introduction, Truls. My name is Birgit Farstad Larsen. I'm Development Director of Covi. Covi is a consultant engineering company. And we work in the planning and design stages of a project, so quite early phases. And we work with quite complex transportation and building projects. And the construction and the building industry, that's the case we are going into today. And it's facing some significant changes in the way of working. So, but with me is Rune. Please.
My name is Rune Malli. I'm from Vixel. We are a VR solution developer based in Gjøvik. And we focus on the industry and construction business.
So, the content of our presentation, I would like to firstly go into the drivers for digitalization in the building and construction industries. So, to refer to the first presenter, what is the problem that we are going to solve? Why are we going to use, for instance, virtual reality? And we will go into a case. We have done a specific study together on a hospital, which is quite a complex building, a hospital in Bergen. And we'll see what are the objectives for reaching this fully digitalized, which in the construction, on the construction site means paperless process. The potential benefits, some specifics on the use of virtual reality, and especially on the technological side from Rune. So, but the drivers. This year, the digital roadmap for the building, construction and real estate sectors will launch. And that states some significant, very ambitious goals. A 50% reduction of climate emission, 50% faster delivery, 25% cost reduction, like the stupetårn, and 50% increase in export. So how are we going to reach those targets? And it's within a relatively short time span until 2025. It means that we have to do something significantly different than the way we have done it up until now. And the building and construction industry is quite traditional. But it's an immensely interesting business to work in now. But the basis, but also the digital roadmap, it states that to be able to achieve this, we have to have a common digital platform, and that's BIM. I will not explain this in detail, but just so that we are all on the same page. The building information model is a 3D model as a basis, and where we exchange data and information efficiently to the whole team. So you have one model for all disciplines in the project. That's the goal. So it's much about information exchange, and that everyone has the most recent information when they need it. So the coordination aspect. And also because often mistakes happen in the intersection between disciplines. And you can see the model in a life cycle perspective. It's not only for the planning and design phase, but you can deliver a digital twin to the building owner that can use this for the operation and maintenance renovation phases. So it's a life cycle. If you want to know more about BIM, I recommend you to go into buildingsmart.no or .com. That's the organization that are working for standardization on open BIM. But so to the case. This is a hospital project in Bergen, Haukeland Children's Ward. It's 50,000 square meters, and a hospital is a quite complex structure. The customer there came to Covey and said, we want to gradually develop this project into a paperless project in the construction phases. So how do we do that? And every time we are working on a new project, we are actually challenged to do something different. And then we also need to start discussing with other types of partners than what we have been working with before. So, but also this is not only about technology. It's not only about adapting new tools or using new software. When we are looking into this, you have to look at the construction phase or the project phase from A to Z. Because if we start doing something in one corner, it will actually affect another part of the project. And that's the problem for the construction industry so far, is that we have done a lot. So we have added new tools, added new software and so on. But the intention to simplify in some parts of the project have actually totally created some more complexity. So we have to see things in an A to Z perspective. And when we go into this, what emerged also the contractual issues. We are working according to contract standards that are 30 years old, based on papers. So everything about what you are supposed to deliver at what time, who is doing what when, is based on documentation on paper. So what happens with responsibilities and so on when you turn this into all being model-based, where information is flowing more freely? So that is an issue that emerges. Of course, it's competitive conditions. If you are advancing in the way you are using technology and so on, and you're have a project in Bergen or another place in Norway, you have to make sure that also local contractors can follow this development, so that it is not only the big national, international contractors that are actually capable of taking upon such a project. So these are issues you have to consider. And then, of course, it's the human factor. The thing is that this is not a technology project. This is a change project. This is about changing the way people are working. And in order to make people change, it has to be a huge motivation in it. So how can we make things as easy or even easier, better than before? That's the big question. So the objectives was about improving efficiency and resource management during the construction phase. That's also about, environmental issues. Better quality, it means discovering mistakes, have better intersection between various disciplines, so that you do things right the first time. And lower cost. Of course, both resource management and improved quality also affects the cost. But it's also about finding the best and most cost-effective solution. So you have to be able to consider various alternatives. So, a bit about the potential benefits. I was saying that you need to look at the whole project. So we were looking at these 4 elements where you see that one of them is virtual reality. But the paperless building process was saying, okay, can we make it PDF-based? That's simple. Or can we make it fully model-based? It means all disciplines in one model, and the big benefit is that you have a more efficient distribution of information and changes in the project, so that everyone have updated information. But of course you have to have this access to this digital data on site. So, and it has to be as good as or better than using papers. Otherwise, the road back to printouts is very short for the worker standing outside trying to do his job. So, access to BIM kiosk, tablets, and of course, very fast enough Wi-Fi coverage, robust equipment that can handle the rain in Bergen. And we have to identify user groups and their needs and their motivations. There is a huge difference between an engineer inside an office and a worker outside in the field. We were also looking at 4D BIM and Lean Construction. 4D is about time progress planning and supported with a more lean construction method. And why we're using this is because you can visualize development over time, and you also divide the project into specific control areas so that you're dealing with one part of the project at a time, and everyone knows that, and they have their defined tasks within that area. So you can improve on resource planning and logistics, improve quality control and communication. And also, it's a very important thing in building and construction is the health, security, and environmental assessments. There are ambitious targets in order to reach 0 injuries within the industry. And then virtual reality. So how can we use virtual reality beyond the wow factor of seeing the construction virtually? Well, it's about communication and also about decision-making processes. How can you decide on the best solution, the cheapest solution, more efficiently? In a hospital project, there is a lot of decisions to be made all the time. You can identify risks and mistakes more easily and easily visualize them and where they are, and motivate through a more clear understanding of the work to be done. So that was the main objectives with the VR part. So I will go just briefly within these, touch upon these 3 elements a bit more. Paperless construction phase using PDFs, that's the most simple alternative to printouts. You just add the details, the more technical details on the PDF and show it next to the model. Why this is important is that within electrical engineering, ventilation, fire safety and these subjects, there are a lot of details that needs to be shown. And they need very exact measurements. And that's a very important part to remember in terms of turning this into a VR. In order for this to work in the field when you're there doing the installations. And by this you can absolutely save time, but still it's not optimal, because you still have to make the PDFs, and they don't really add value except for the more practical part of it. So this is where we are heading more into the model-based, where you can actually have the model, carrying it out on the site, and you highlight what is relevant for you at the moment where you are. But of course, this is where you can have the most time saved. But it requires that you have training, that people are comfortable with using this. And the important part, it's not fully possible at this point in time for those disciplines that are very dependent of detailed measures, like for instance the ones I mentioned, like electrical engineering and so on. But this is definitely the future, where you can use and access the model on site, and very easily. And Rune will come back to the complexity of this model, so that will give you a bit more perspective on it. But of course you have to be able to access it on site. BIM kiosks are quite common, where you can gather around the kiosks and everyone will see the model, and perhaps someone who's more comfortable and trained with using the model can demonstrate for the others. But of course tablets, that you can access on tablets, important. This will give you the real-time information, where you are, when you need it, but you need it fast enough, and you need to have a clear motivation for using this instead of printouts. So virtual reality and also augmented reality, how can this technology actually improve on the understanding and the completion of a more digitalized building project? Well, it helps on understanding the project, the sizes, the details, and also the feel of space. Perhaps the latter is the most important part of it. In this case, this hospital, we have 3 objectives. That was to improve on the decision-making processes, reveal risk elements, because we have a target of 0 injuries and mistakes, and of course motivate workers by giving them a clearer view of the work to be done. And now I will give the word to Rune.
Yeah, so Birgit talked about the overall strategy. I will speak briefly about some of the technical challenges of working with the huge BIM models and how we decided to solve them on this project. Our mission was to create a VR application that connected people across the country, from Bergen to Oslo to Trondheim, and make them collaborate and solve problems in a big construction project. So to be able to hold virtual meetings, we need to move 9 extremely big project files into VR from 9 different departments, like electrical, ventilation, architecture, stuff like that. The project files are approximately 450 million points large. I don't really have a scale to describe how big that is, but it's about 100 times bigger than most systems are made for today. So that was challenging. And everything had to be automatically generated to be able to hold daily meetings at a short notice. And we also had to keep a 90 frames per second refresh rate on the system. That sounds trivial because we're used to having programs dealing with big projects today. But most systems on desktop PCs work at maybe 10, 15 frames per second. That's unacceptable in VR because that would make you feel drunk or even fall over. So that was one big challenge. And we also need to read PCF files, and that contains the problems that needs to be solved in the meeting. And then finally we need to have about 20 people in VR at the same time to communicate with voice and see each other with avatars and stuff like that, like you seen earlier today. That's about a part of the project files that we're talking about. We have all the tiny, it's good to see the floors and stuff like that, but at this level you can't see the electrical wires and everything. To move this into VR, we started by building a way to collect all the project files. This can either be manually uploaded to our servers or synced via a folder similar to Dropbox. When new files arrive on our servers, it automatically starts to process these files. They were broken up into 450,000 individual pieces. Every piece was tagged, every door, window, every construction part was tagged. So when you are inside VR, you can look up a database and get information about every object in the construction project. And then it was the optimization problem. We created a customized level of detail system that automatically generated many different variations of each part, so that at a distance you can see a low resolution piece, and at the close-up you see the original full-size model. Then everything was moved into our Unity application. We used Unity in this case because it's very flexible at moving data in and out of at runtime. And then we placed our VR application on top of that. Our VR application basically contains all the basic collaboration tools. We've seen some of them today, like seeing each other, talking to each other, seeing who is live or online. But also we need tools for construction, which was measuring tapes, creating 3D objects in VR so that you make suggestions of how to solve a problem, delegate tasks to other people by email and things like that. And then we need the way to read the BCF files which contain the problem that was going to be solved. And then an easy way to teleport and locate that problem and highlight it so that it's clear for everyone who's involved in the meeting. Basically, with a VR station at every office and at the construction site, you can have an expert in the office in Oslo who can take part in meetings in Bergen, Trondheim, or even other parts of the world without leaving his office. And basically just spend his time solving problems instead of traveling. And this kind of setup is very useful for other types of streaming in huge kind of data. But basically, there is no end to what data science we can handle with this stuff.
Yeah. So thank you very much for your attention. We have found this study been working with quite interesting, and also the kind of knowledge sharing we have had, which has been absolutely necessary in order to solve this. And lastly, I will say that the building and construction industries, that's absolutely an industry to follow in the years to come. So, thank you.
Thank you. Really inspiring and good luck.
Thank you.
Hope to see you in some projects in Hamar eventually. Even though I must say that even 25% lower cost still would have made Stupetårnet the most expensive Stupetårn in the world. Well, yes, Hamar isn't a big place, but we're known around the world actually. Thanks to Hamar-based companies like Making View with, among others, but they have 10 years experience within VR, AR and 360 degrees production, which means that companies like Red Bull and Audi, big companies internationally, more than welcome pays for their knowledge. They call themselves nerds with antennas, and their slogan is, like being there. You have to do like this. I've learned from the speaker who's coming. Here to show us how to use VR both in internal training and external marketing through a project for a Norwegian vessel called Hurtigruta, a fast route. Please welcome from Making View, CEO and today Captain Are Vingfollet.
Thank you, Sailor. Yeah, I'm here to show you how VR is being used in a marketing purpose. This is Hurtigruta. For the English-speaking people here, Hurtigruta is a shipping company traveling up and down the Norwegian coastline, carrying post, goods, tourists all year round. But they also have a lot of exciting cruises all around the world, especially down to Antarctica. And they also travel to Greenland, Svalbard, to South America. And these cruises are not that very known around in the world. So they came to us last year and asked us if we could help them to try to visualize what it's like to be, for example, down in Antarctica using VR. And we use every day our skills to create like being their experiences. That's what we do. So we came up with a solution for that, and we traveled down 1 year ago down to Antarctica with Hurtigruten. Before that, we also had a couple of weeks up and down the Norwegian coast to try to shoot the experiences that you can have on board one of their cruises. We have worked around the world over the last 7 years, dealing with all kinds of clients, really cool clients, I would say. But today it's Hurtigruten, which is the main purpose. So 1 year ago, it was in November last year, we packed our bags and went down to the other side of the globe. Spent 3 weeks down in the ice with Hurtigruten. And coming from Norway, it's a rather special experience to be down there. You feel a bit lonely down there. It's a long way to land, really. But it's really exciting. We had a lot of tools going down there. Especially some scenes we did down there, we did with a special drone we made. This is a hardware stabilized 360 drone. When you shoot VR content with this kind of drone, you remove the drone. So actually you have the sensation of being a ball up in the air, looking in every direction. And that was part of the productions that we did down there. The team we sent down was Lars, colleague of mine, my brother Paul, and these were kind of the things that we met down there. Is rather cool. These animals are really cool, and they had a really nice experience going down there, except the two last the first 2 or 3 days. I think it was a hurricane down there, so the boat went backwards for two days, so that was quite special. But still, we succeeded in capturing all the materials and started out to make this marketing tool for Hurtigruten. That was how it began, but still it turned out afterwards also to be used very much as an internal training tool for the sales agents and the sales people inside Hurtigruten. I'm going to share with you now some images that we shot down there. I'm only going to show the Antarctica part, so it's 1.5 to 2 minutes with images from what we experienced down there. I'm going to take it from here. So this is some thing you can experience going down there. As you heard today, Making New is involved in a lot of different type of projects, but the core is 360 video, both hardware development and software developments. So for Hurtigruta, the core experience is based around the 360 video. So what we did, we bought plus 50 Samsung Gear VR headsets. They are mobile-driven headsets, which they can distribute all around the globe. This phone we turn into a VR device. This is, after we buy them, we scrap all the content being so that makes it a phone. You can't use it as a phone anymore. It's only a VR device. And that's one reason for that. It's for the usage to be simple for people all around the globe that shall use this tool. And when you enter the VR world that we have created, we have built the observation deck on one of the new ship that they will launch next year. Hybrid ship they're called Roald Amundsen. They will launch next year. This is kind of the observation deck. And on that deck you will find different displays. On the left side it's experiences from Antarctica. On the right side here is the experiences from Lofoten. So let's see, I have a video here trying to explain how you can navigate and how to experience like being there movies in this app. So here you are inside that deck. You see you're slowly sailing through Antarctica and you see the displays. And you see this little marker here that follows your head movement, and by putting that marker in the displays, for example in a slideshow that we just saw, you see it have this time bar moving up and you start your videos. So here you can choose between Lofoten and Antarctica, and if you saw up you will see a projector in the ceiling there. And you see we put on a marker in each display, it turns to different videos, and every video is shot from a first-person view, so we actually have the sensation of being part of that trip. So let's see, let's take for example this boat cruises in Antarctica, and it opens.
Leave the ship at the tender pit and let us bring you close to the elements, wildlife and icebergs in a small boat.
Are inside this experience, you actually sit beside these persons in that boat. And Hurtigruten is now using this all over the globe by the agents, in their flagship stores. In every sales situation they use this tool. So people can have the sensation of being there and be kind of amazed of how cool it is, and trigger them to buy one of their cruises. But as I said, this started out like being a marketing tool. But it quickly turns out also that, for example, in Tallinn, in east of Europe, they have 150 sales representatives, a call center. And they can't afford to send people all around the globe to be a part of each experience. So now they're using this tool internally to learn themselves how every excursion or experience work, what you can do there, and they sell better. They can advise their clients in a better way using this tool. And here you see that phone. This is what you, when you turn it on, it says enter VR, and it's one more button called tutorial, so you have an explanation of how to do this. And this is actually built, a tool that we built for them. It's an Android launcher. That means that we can sit here in Hamar and control 50+ devices all around the globe to remove content, add content, help people that have problems, update the phones in different versions, and things like that. So that launcher we use for every client that we built for Gear VR, which is a Samsung product. And even Samsung is now interested in that product because they don't have it themselves. So that's a kind of cool thing. And this makes it very simple to use. Turn it on, click on one button, and it works. And now they are actually selling this, especially in the States. People are quite expensive, these trips, but people see this experience, take the goggles off and say, where can I sign? I'll definitely go down there. So it's a really cool project, and it shows how VR can be used also for marketing purposes. And in this case, it's a mix between 360 video and this environment in 3D that we created in Unity. So it's the next thing now is to add content. So we are talking about Svalbard now during winter, and they also have cruises all around the globe, especially the adventure type of cruises. So that's the next step for Hurtigruten, to try to add more content. And they're also building a web solution for them, so they also can experience and use this online, besides the VR goggle that we made for them. So that's actually to show what we've done with Hurtigruten. It's a national icon, so it's a very cool product and a company to work with. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you for an inspiring speech.
Thank you very much.
Remember to just make it like being there, not so good that it's actually being there.
Yeah.
So don't be too good. Yeah. Is this interesting? Yeah. Ever since 10:15 this morning, my brain has been filled with exciting information, probably yours as well, and maybe you, as I, are sitting there wondering, how can I use this in my company? Hopefully the next speaker will give some answers to that now, as we welcome the consulting director for Suprasteria to University. There you go. Thank you.
Thank you for that introduction. We've come to the part of the day where I worry about the most often in cases like this, because we've been inspired in very many different ways. Some simple, some more complex, big stuff, small stuff. Everyone thinks, okay, this is the future. This is what we're going to work with in the years to come. And then tomorrow morning, we get up and we're gonna, okay, so where do I start? And I guess half of the crowd is probably among those who work in a company where you think exactly this, how could our company benefit? And maybe half of the crowd is people who are enthusiastic about VR. Maybe it's the only thing you do, maybe it's what you deliver, and but I can almost assure everyone that you will meet people who think like this. Even if this is the most important thing to you right now, people will think like this at some point. So that's why I'm talking about this, because I'm working at Suprasteria, which is one of the big consultancies in Norway. We mainly have IT consultancy, but we also do business consulting, which is mainly what I do. And these are the questions that I work with answering for a lot of my clients every day, really. And not only on VR, of course, but VR, AR, MR is, as we see, it's super relevant to very many different clients these days. And we work a lot in the public sector, and maybe surprisingly to some of you, that is where we see some of the biggest enthusiasts for this right now. There will probably be quite a lot of stuff. I'll just plow through it. So if you wonder about something, I can't really see anyone here, so if you raise your hand to ask a question, I can't see it. But if you have questions or you have comments or something, it is allowed to shout, or you can grab me on the way out. Okay? Yes? Yeah, good, good. Okay, so the question is, yes, it's super interesting and everyone's super inspired, but how can we make it work and how can we create value for our company or for our clients or in our context? And the question is, of course, yes, you can, but we have to do it in a very elaborate way to make sure that it works. I actually got some more light now, didn't I? Yeah, so people, if you nod your heads and smile and wave and stuff, I will see it. Okay. One thing is, and we've learned a lot about that today, one thing is knowing about this stuff. Knowing about VR, AR, MR. I'll get back to the MR thing. It's not been mentioned today as far as I know, but yes, MR is a thing. One thing is knowing about it, knowing quite a lot about it. We've seen a lot of people who know a lot about it. But there's a long way to travel from knowing about it and to actually having super happy users and super happy employees and making a lot of money from it and even benefiting society, having happy politicians, right? So the road there is quite long, and that's what a lot of clients of mine and probably a lot of your companies are struggling with. How can we make that journey from, oh, this exciting technology and we can do fun stuff with it, to creating value that is actually translatable into customer value or business value or value in general. So on one side we see we're gonna have to look very quickly into VR, AR, MR. We're going to have to look into the technology and the content that we're going to have to produce to make this value. We're going to have to look into what jobs and activities that we want VR, AR, MR to do for us. And we're going to look into benefits, and mainly about benefits really. The other ones have been covered earlier today. So I'm going to be very quickly about the VR, AR, MR and then moving on. Okay, there's a small navigational thing up in the right corner, so you can just follow along, because this will be my agenda, the 4 main points. Very quickly about this, the VR, AR, MR, and my main proposition to you is dive right in. Because it's really the only way to get to know this, and it's been mentioned a couple of times today. Until you start working with it, you won't really realize what opportunities lie there. Which means if you in any way can get your hands on a headset, try to set something up and try to have a menu like Simon showed us, as a menu with pictures from my Dropbox, showing it to your colleagues, see if it facilitates a meeting better. Something that gives you an input on how this stuff works is better than nothing. But of course jumping in can be quite scary, so what I'm going to talk a little bit about is how do we jump in and not kill ourselves. Okay, so very, very quickly on the VR, AR, MR, and this is interesting. I would ask you to raise your hands, but I'm just going to tell you. Magic Leap is a fantastically interesting and exciting company who you're probably going to hear a lot more about in the coming years. And the CEO of Magic Leap told us 2 years ago that VR, AR, MR, there is only R. And in this case, I'm just going to go quickly through it. Everything kind of connects together. Heard that a couple of times today too. On one side we have VR. It's not real, it's virtual, it's within, it's quite enclosed. You have something in front of your eyes. You can't actually see the reality out there, you see the virtual reality. That's VR. On the other side you have the real world, and you kind of have AR if you put some stuff on top of that. Right? So it could be anything. Right now we put a number to show you how high this mountain is, but it could be anything. You've seen a couple of examples today. Mixed reality is if you take virtual reality and put it on top of reality. So not only numbers, not only pictures, but place something that's 3D and actually animated maybe on top of reality. Then there's all kinds of gray scales in this area, but to me this makes kind of sense. So the big difference is if if you look at the glasses, if you have something in front so you can't see through it, or you can actually see through it. It kind of divides the playing field here. But then of course there are other ways of approaching it. You have cardboards where you put your phone in, and we've seen some examples of other ways to put your phone in. And on the other side you use the phone in another way. Actually you use the camera on the phone. This Pokemon Go is an example of this, right? And then on moving closer to AR, VR in a daily context, you have glasses. Google Glass was an example. We'll probably get things that are even more anonymous quite soon. I saw Samsung had a patent out for a contact lens with sensors and cameras and projection on the retina. So it will be exciting. How close can we get to real life and still have augmented reality? But very, very quickly, to me this is kind of the picture. This is where we navigate, and as has already been mentioned, a combination of these things will probably be most useful in most contexts. Which means if you're going to solve something for your company or for your clients, then you're going to have to look at a combination of these. In some cases, actually, we create stuff that some people are in the meeting room with VR glasses, and they're inside a model in the meeting room, and there's an engineer out in where the actual digital twin is with AR glasses. So they're communicating, and they have the same data available, but one is in VR, one is in AR. So look for the combinations and look for what is useful in each context. Okay, moving right along. What does it take? And this is quite surprising to a lot of people, because you'd think in, at least in big organizations, very many people think that IT will be heavily involved. But IT might not have to build that much of this, because there are engines out there, there are cloud platforms. Most of it will happen outside our own systems. But we have to work on making data available to place it in, especially in AR settings. And we have to do some system integration. But we're probably not going to build the entire system, right? And this will be a relief to some IT people, but it might also be scary, because you kind of move some of the IT responsibility outside of IT, which, yeah, it's scary to some people. But then on the other hand, other people in the organization will have to do quite a lot of work, and maybe work they aren't used to, and they're going to have to hire companies who are specializing in these things, because you need to create tools or use existing tools. You have to find out what activities to use VR, AR, MR for, because I'm not here to just create experiences. I want to use it to create value, right? Experiences also, but not only. You have to create content, and to many people this is it's a surprise to see how much content you actually have to create. We saw an example of using Bim earlier. You're very lucky if you have a Bim, because then you don't have to build all the buildings and all the stuff that you need to put into your virtual reality. If you don't have that, then you're going to have to build it, and it can be quite a lot of work. Then you have to measure effect and follow up, because whenever you try something new and stuff that's supposed to deliver value, you're going to have to find out as soon as possible, does it actually deliver value? Is it actually useful for us? You're going to have to measure this. And maybe you're going to have to bring some scientists in or some analysts, but you're going to have to follow up to find out if it's working as intended. Otherwise, you're jumping blind, right? You're jumping in and experimenting, but you have no idea if it works, which is not good. And then we're moving on, right? Yes, I did add this thing, the pointer to IT, because often IT has to help with all of the other things too. But this is, yeah, goes without saying. Okay, so what can be used for? And that's interesting, because we've seen quite a lot of examples today. We've created some. If you were in the other track, you'd see one of the cases from Soprasteria, the company that I work for, where Oslo University Hospital is presenting a way of planning surgery to make surgeries more efficient, both heart surgeries on small kids, where you should actually do it as fast as possible, otherwise you'd probably not be able to do it. And also liver surgery, where you plan, the surgeons go together and plan where to cut in the liver when you have liver cancer, and then you can actually leave quite a lot of the liver in compared to earlier surgeries. So AR helps them to make a more efficient cut, which means you might actually be able to operate again if the need arises later, which is quite a big value. that we were able to contribute. Just an example. But maybe surprising to a lot of people, but there are tons of ways of using VR, AR, MR. And this is not the entire list. It's like asking, what can you use the internet for? It can be used for an immense amount. And you're going to have to look for examples, and you're going to have to be creative, and you're going to have to test and experiment. I could probably dive into some of these things, but they are quite self-explanatory. And I'm aiming for the last point, right? The benefit thing. But all of these are examples. And I would probably, we're working on right now planning and construction, working on with Bane Nor, a very exciting project where they're gonna make a new station. You probably know that at Ringerike. They're gonna make a new train station and building a new station town around it. It's very interesting. And they're thinking about placing a digital twin of this station in the actual terrain, so that politicians can stand on top of a hill looking down and planning or making decisions based on seeing the actual model in the terrain, which is going to be exciting. Looking forward to look at that. Other examples, we've seen quite a lot these days. Okay, so over to the exciting stuff. For every business consultant, this is the most important when it comes to new technology. How do we secure benefits from this? How do we, when everyone's excited and everyone thinks this is so much fun, how do we make sure that it actually creates value for the users, for our employees, for the business, we're making more money, or at least not going bankrupt, or for society, for the world, for everyone? How do we secure those benefits? And there are three ways of approaching it. These, you won't get around these. This is super important. You're never going to be able to run any project in any company without it living up to these three demands. It has to be desirable. Somebody will have to want it and value it. It has to be viable, as in we're going to have to make money or at least not go bankrupt, spend more than we earn. It has to be viable in the setting that we live up to all our expectations, if it is societal expectations or the market or politicians or whatnot. So any viability that we don't live up to, it's not going to work. And then it has to be doable. And probably, as I talked about, maybe half of the people in this room are most interested in that. Is it doable? Can we do it? 450 million vertices. Is it possible? And this, it has to be, otherwise we won't be able to do it, right? So these three, you won't get around them. You can't do a project if you don't follow these. And we see a lot of examples where people do and they fail. There is no way to get around it. Sometimes you get surprised. It was more viable than it looked, or it turned out to be super desirable, even if we didn't check it first. But my recommendation is test it as soon as possible. Get to a point where you can find out if it actually is desirable, viable, and doable. Okay? And then, moving further, how do we secure benefits? This is something that you should be able to. You should be able to run a project from idea, and then defining and designing it, and then prototyping it. Finding out if it works and what do we have to solve, and then implement it, test and refine it. You should be able to do this, otherwise there won't be a result at all. But then we very often see that companies get good at doing this. Companies get good at going through with a project. But then there are something called goals and needs on one side, and then results on the other. And many companies have problems connecting these. You have kind of goals and needs, but then throughout defining and designing and prototyping, the goals kind of disappear. You deliver on something that we call the descriptions and the parameters, but not on the actual goals and needs, which may be changing. So what we recommend is working on connecting what you get for results in one end with what you thought and the vision and the goals and needs that you had on the other side. And getting this loop working, that's actually quite hard, because you have to measure, evaluate and learn during the process, not only when the project is over, but also all the way, every iteration throughout the project. And you have to do what we call governance, which means trying to control this trying to guide it on the way. If you see something coming up in the learning process, then you have to get that information to the project and make sure that they change what they're working on. And this is really hard, because if you made a plan and the project manager says, okay, but this is the plan, this is what we're delivering on, then suddenly someone looking over the goals say, okay, we're not reaching the goals, we don't get the results that we want to change, then that's really hard for the project manager. And because that's what they're measured on. So just see how difficult this could actually be when you're in the middle of doing those red things in the middle, which we have to do to be able to go through with it. And then of course, the governance should be able to take into account several projects, which means you do one VR project and another AI project, and you even try to combine them. There are different people working on different projects. They have different timelines and different meetings, and someone will have to govern it from some kind of visionary goal, need standpoint. Does this make sense? Good. Okay, MVP. I assume that most of you know what it is, but just to make it clear, MVP stands for Minimal Viable Product. It is what we try to get to as soon as possible in the process to make sure that we get some kind of input on how it's working. So it's a minimal viable product or minimal testable product, something that we can launch into some kind of context, not necessarily the market or the business or the organization, but some kind of context where we get some feedback. This is something that you do whenever you do any innovation. You make an MVP, you start testing it, and you build from there, and it starts spinning. But the challenge for many organizations is that the picture ends up looking like this. There are quite a lot of MVPs, but since you don't govern it right and you don't measure it right, then there's kind of MVP popcorn. It pops up here and it pops up there, and people having a lot of fun, and they're failing fast and having fun. It's super interesting and innovative and creative, and everyone's having fun, but you're not actually creating much value for the company. Do you follow me on that? What we're after is having the MVP spin up slowly at first, but then maybe more and more after a while, the rest of the organization, the rest of the business. Which means whenever we do a VR project, we need to make sure that it's kind of connected, and in some cases it has to be separate and connected at the same time. Not very easy. But it has to be kind of connected to what we're actually after in the entire organization. And in some cases, the entire society, the entire city, the entire country. So it has to connect in some way. And it's not very easy for those in the project to do this. So it has to be done kind of connected to the project. So this is what we work quite a lot on, to make sure that innovation MVPs don't just fizzle out, and some of them maybe turn into gold, and then suddenly you have another company on the side. I'm not going to mention any of them, but there are some Norwegian examples. Try to make sure that doesn't happen. Make sure that the value that you benefit from this project is actually taken into the organization. And one last point, when these MVPs are running, we want it to be increased effect, right? We want to be able to learn, we want to be able to build more and more value, and that was also mentioned actually earlier. It's a very big difference between having 12 years experience and 1 year experience 12 times. It's a very big difference, because we want the MVPs to increase in effect. We want it to be bigger and stronger and more valuable. But we very often forget to make sure that we learn, to document, we're never going to do that again. Or we're at least going to do this, because this is what works and that's what not works. Right? We make sure that when you do experimentation, when you use new technology and new inspiring experiences, make sure that you learn and document the learning and spread the learning, so that people in the other MVPs, the popcorn around the place, also avoid those mistakes that you did. And we have people all the time who say it's not fun to learning from other people's mistakes, but I hope you do. When you're 12, you're allowed to have to learn from your own mistakes, but when you're 40, 45, don't. Try to avoid it. Okay. so what we do is we place all the projects. You remember the 3 arrows? We place those on one side. We try to make sure that something happens outside of that. Not in the project, but it's kind of governing the project. We have to do idea generation, creativity, gathering initiatives, gathering possible benefits. But this is easy. Ideas are all over the place. And as I showed you, there's a slide earlier about all the different kinds of uses of VR, AR, MR. So this is not hard, but you have to handle it. You have to handle the ideas and make sure that you can make choices on, so what do we do now? When we have all these ideas, what do we do? Which one should we move on with? And the decision has to be, as I tried to illustrate here, it has to be kind of intuitive because it has to happen fast, but you also have to have an analytical heart. So you have to try to find out in advance which ideas will be most efficient, have the lowest cost and the greatest benefit, but at the same time use the heart. Especially if you have a lot of experience, heart is more important because then you have all the experience that you can actually use the intuition. Okay, so then you do it. You decided, you do it, and as soon as possible you turn back to, so what do we learn now? What do we know now? And this is super important because it helps you make new decisions, it helps you go to the second iteration, and it also actually helps you come up with better ideas next time. So don't forget this. This is what we build all our toolbox around when it comes to innovation work. We have routines and we have technical tools that help us go through this process. But it's possible to do it. One person could do it as long as you're conscious about what it takes. What we say is there are 5 major areas of responsibility, and these are it. There's the idea management, there's strategy and enterprise alignment. It has to connect to the overarching strategy. There's innovation program management, making sure that all the innovation happens in the same direction. Portfolio management, that's kind of a head of program management, head of production management. And business analytics. All these roles, if you don't have them, you're not going to create value. Then, or you can, but you have to be extremely lucky. Okay guys, you ready? Good luck.
Well, thank you. Inspiring, and now we have all the answers. Thank you. Well, we've entered the future and realized that the future actually is now. Our heads are full, and hopefully you learned something and thought, I could use this in my company. Probably you don't have the solution yourselves, but a lot of the speakers, you're able to contact them either directly or through Varu and Håvard. They will help you if you need some guidance or help or actual assistance. On behalf of Varu, Sykehuset Innlandet and Computerworld, thank you very much for attending. We also would like to thank the sponsors, speakers, and the companies on the stands, which will be open until 5:30. So if you haven't been there, check them out. They close at 5:30, and either if you're going home or attending the dinner in Café Valuta. So please mingle and talk about the opportunities. And remember to bring a copy of the magazine Hamarregionen 24. The last edition is about VR and technology, so bring that home. At the last, please give a big hand to Håvard Øste and his crew at Varu for making this conference possible. So Norwegian's first ever genuine VR conference has come to an end. Make sure to hashtag your photos or videos with the hashtag NordVR17, and we can look back to this until we meet again next year, because this is going to be even bigger, better, and more international. So, thank you very much, and safe journey. Bros.